highest threat in the red area right here. 6 to 12-foot storm surge with severe beach erosion and partial inundation of the coast. A moderate threat of where we're expecting the storm surge south of there down towards Palm Beach, extending northward up towards Daytona Beach of a 4 to 5-foot storm surge. Also take note right here on the northern shore of Lake Okeechobee, we're expecting it to be somewhere between 4 and 6-foot surge. So it's not just those ocean waterways. This also affects any large bodies of water over land as well. Forecast track right on target, continue to move over the Florida Peninsula, taking its time in doing so, and we'll also likely see a second landfall as it moves over the Gulf of Mexico into the earlier part of next week. Catherine?
Jackie, we're going to have a live report from Lake Okeechobee in just a moment, but let's get back to the eye of that storm. Is it unusually large, unusually wide?
Well, it's actually closed in a little bit. If we could get our Viper radar picture up here to take another look at that eye for you. It was earlier this evening about 70, maybe 75 miles wide, and that is pretty large for the eye of a hurricane. And now it has closed in just a little bit more. It's more like 50 miles wide. But because it is so big and because it is moving so slow, that is why we're seeing such a long, prolonged event here. Catherine?
Jackie, what can we expect now that the eye is on shore? Is it going to weaken, or is this storm just going to truck on over to the Gulf and stay at its strength?
Well, I think it could stay at this strength. It could possibly even still intensify. As long as we have a big chunk of this eye over the water, we could still see this holding its own or possibly strengthening just a little bit over the next couple of hours. But once the whole eye is then on shore, it will dramatically decrease in intensity and probably become a tropical storm tomorrow.
But no,
or today. I guess it's Sunday already.
Yeah, we want to keep people informed about the back wall of the eye wall is certainly as dangerous as the front of that storm, so we don't want people to believe that the worst has passed.
That's right, and like I said, as we call it, the bad side of the storm, usually get the worst winds on the north and the east side of the storm, and that hasn't hit yet. So while things have been just awful all evening long, there we go. Once this part of the storm moves on shore, we're going to see possibly some of the worst gusts that we've seen just yet.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jackie, we'll be with you throughout the night. I know you're with us till 3 a.m. this morning.
Yeah, and Jackie mentioned Lake Okeechobee. That is where Ed Lavandera is right now. Ed, most of the deaths historically in hurricanes come in inland flooding, not actually anything along the beach, and I guess that is a concern in Lake Okeechobee.
Exactly, and and the main cause of that is flooding, and that's why we're here. That's what they're concerned about here. Lake Okeechobee is a large lake, but a rather shallow lake. We're told that it doesn't get any deeper than 20 feet, but the National Hurricane Center expecting surges out of this lake of about 6 feet.
Have access to that. They're just sitting there sort of in a vacuum of information.
And they're in the dark. This didn't happen during the daytime. It happened at night.
Chad, the sound of this wind, it's a howling sound, and it has to be maddening for these people who have no contact with the outside world, and this is just going on for such a long time and such a loud storm.
Well, I grew up in Nebraska, and we had tornado warnings, and there was always an all clear. And tornado warnings go off, 35 minutes later, there's an all clear, you get out of your basement, everything's fine. This has just been going on and on and on.
We haven't seen as much flooding in this area or as much rain in this area as at least I had anticipated.
Well, this storm did slow down a lot, and a lot of the rain cores are a little bit farther to our south. We had a few cells, but nowhere near the 16 inches that some of the predictions were. But I'm sure that there are a lot more numbers like 6s and 8s, and Jackie Jarris can tell us more. But I'd be a little bit farther down to the south of us.
Yeah, we're going to bring Jackie in fact, but Anderson and Chad, since you can't go anywhere, we thought you might get answered.
Hold on.
Since you can't go anywhere.
Hey guys, how hard is the rain coming down there right now? Is it pretty light?
It's turned into mist now. The wind is so strong that there aren't raindrops anymore. It literally has just turned into a spray.
But there was a time there for a while, though, where the rain seemed to be coming up from the ground. It seemed, you called it confused.
Yeah, it's a confused rain. When it hits the building, the rain goes up, the rain goes down, and it just kind of scatters. It doesn't go in one direction. It just looks like it's confused. That's the technical term for it.
Well, while you haven't seen a lot of rain yet, hold on, because some of these heavier bands are slowly making their way. It doesn't look like, though, good news for you guys, that the eye wall is going to quite make it in your area, but you are going to be getting some of these very intense outer bands pushing on on in. The storm itself is pushing up to the north and to the west about 7 miles per hour. So a couple hours from now, you're going to start to see some of these really heavy rain bands come in. You're going to start to watch those winds gust up just again. So even though you're misting right now, hold on a couple hours, guys, because that real heavy rain is on its way.
Jackie, do you have a sense of at what point? I mean, Chad was saying from his maybe 4 a.m. would probably be the worst of the storm for us. Does that seem right to you for where you are?
Yeah, I think that's real reasonable. I say in the next 2 hours, maybe you'll start to get the edge of the heavier bands in, and that's going to be pretty persistent. That's going to could last maybe a good 6+ hours of these very heavy downpours.
Wow. Let's, Chad, we have some questions for you. People are sending us email from all across the country, including this one from California from Joe, who says he keeps hearing this term surge that you and Jackie have talked about throughout the evening. He wants to know exactly what is it and what exactly happens to create surge conditions during a hurricane.
There's a low pressure. That's what we call a hurricane. It's a low pressure, and this one is pretty low. It's 900.
And just it was a horrible feel. As you can imagine.
In as well, and there's a bubble of water under the hurricane, and it might only be 2 feet high, but as this bubble goes over land, this whole the shallow part of the continental shelf rises up, and so does that bubble of water, and that bubble of water is the storm surge. And when that happens at the same time of a high tide, that's when you really double the effect of a storm surge.
Okay, another
Anything
email.
else?
Jackie, are you still with us?
Yeah, and that's pretty much what's happening right now. Actually, a lot of the high tides have been happening in this area from midnight until the 2 a.m. hour, so we're still kind of getting in it. If we could go back to our weather computer source on GR115, I want to show you what you could expect when we talk about this storm surge, just how bad it's going to be and what kind of an impact that it has. The red areas here, and that does include Melbourne, where Chad and Anderson are, a very high threat of seeing a significant storm surge. 6 to 12 feet, I think 12 is going to be a little bit on the high end. It's going to be more like to 8 feet storm surge, and that's above normal tide. And that is going to cause some severe beach erosion and partial inundation of the coastal areas. Now, a moderate threat a little bit farther on down to the south here into Palm Beach, and that's where John Zarella is, and then extending northward from this area around Daytona Beach. And you could expect there a 4 to 5 foot storm surge, major beach erosion, and some of the near shore roads are going to be washed out. And the other thing to keep in mind too, when we talk about the storm surge, we talk about the ocean waves that are coming on up. Well, don't forget that large bodies of water over land also have the same phenomenon happen, and so we are expecting to see maybe 5-6 foot storm surge on the north side of Lake Okeechobee.
All right, this is turning into a late-night weather class, actually. Well, we do have another email, guys, and it's a good question. It's from Jenny. She's in Pensacola. Would like to know if Frances will feed off any of the bodies of water inside the state. I'm assuming that's Lake Okeechobee she's talking about. So I am in Pensacola, she says. Should we be preparing for Frances?
Jackie, go ahead and take the Pensacola part.
All right. I'm not sure if I've got the forecast track yet up on my computer. It'll take me a second to get that to you. But yeah, if you live in the Florida Panhandle, you do need to be concerned. From about Pensacola, everywhere on eastward, you're under that tropical storm advisory. So you do expect to see those winds. We're going to have a second landfall with this thing as it moves across the Florida Peninsula. We're going to see it come on out into the Gulf once again. I don't expect it to intensify too much as it goes back over the open water. Probably still staying at tropical storm strength, but you're going to see a little bit of surge there. You're going to see those strong winds anywhere, between 40, maybe 60, 70 miles an hour.
Same thing happened with Andrew as well. Remember, Andrew went across South Florida, and then it kept going back into the Gulf of Mexico, Jackie, and then made that big hard right turn. This isn't going to be as strong as Andrew because it has a much longer part of Florida to go over. But the answer to the question about the water, the lakes in Florida matter, yes, they do. And in fact, especially that southern part of Florida where the Everglades are, as Andrew went across the Everglades, it didn't slow down at all. I mean, the wind speeds may have went down 15 or 20 miles per hour, but it exited the side of that state with just as much power as it had when it came over and right through Homestead.
And it is good news it is taking the long path, I guess, through the state. Should it hit, cross over into the Gulf and hit that nice warm water, then it would be bad news for the Gulf of Mexico.
Absolutely. And I do have this graphic to show you. This is actually the forecast wind speed graphics. But just to give you an idea, we're going to show you here what the intensity is as the forecast moves across, and take a look at some of these timestamps as it moves through. That's 8 a.m. Sunday morning here, just about 6 hours from now. And you can see how it dramatically weakens as it stays over the land and then back over the open Gulf waters, very briefly making a second landfall somewhere to the east of the Tallahassee area, and then heading on up into Alabama. It may even be ending up perhaps as far west of you, but right now it looks like probably into Alabama as a tropical depression, and then moving on up into the Tennessee Valley. So even once this does get back over land once again over the Florida Panhandle, we're still talking days and days that Francis is going to be affecting the southeastern United States.
Okay, one more email, guys, and then I promise we'll move on with things. But can two hurricanes run into each other, and what would happen? That's from Jessica.
Fujiwara, Chad, go.
Chad, you go first.
Yeah, go to your local sushi shop and ask for a Fujiwara to go. It is actually when two storms, because they're spinning in the same direction, they can't really get together per se. You've all seen the movie, or at least heard about it, The Perfect Storm. That was a different situation when a cold core northern latitude storm was moved into a tropical-like system. As that moved together, those storm systems did combine. But if you see when we call Fujiwara, would you hold this for me?
Yep.
You have one hurricane here, you have another hurricane. They actually will spin around each other, and this happens in the Pacific a lot more than it happens in the Atlantic, because we just don't get the number of hurricanes to do this. But one storm will go around, and it'll go around, and it'll go around, and it'll just keep going around until, obviously, one hits land or the other one hits land. So
well,
typically, they will not go together.
We are not just getting questions, gentlemen. I just want to say that we're getting a lot of comments on what a terrific job that you both are doing out there, and I know we all appreciate.
Come on back in.
We all appreciate all of your hard work and long hours that you're putting in.
I actually have one question for you or for Jackie. Are we still in tornado warning? I mean, is that still apply?
I think the warnings have expired, Jackie, right? But is the watch still going?
Yeah, right now we don't have any warnings, but yeah, the watch is still in effect. That goes until 8 o'clock in the morning for tomorrow. We could possibly see that extended, of course. Yeah, tornadoes very common in hurricanes, but I think we've only had one ground.
Typically small, though.
Yeah,
right?
very
typically
weak.
Small tornadoes. They're not F4s.
No, F0, F1. We've been seeing very weak shear, maybe 80-mile-an-hour winds in some of these radar-indicated tornadoes.
Why is it that tornadoes? I mean, why are tornadoes spinning off a hurricane?
Well, you have big storms on the cells themselves, and as they're on the outer fingers.
Behind me, please.
On the outer fingers of this thing, as the fingers go by, they hit land, and land is actually a piece of friction.
Okay, guys, listen, we have to go to break. Chad, class is over for right this second.
Oh, no.
Hold
All
that
right, well,
thought.
he's gonna continue to teach
Anderson,
me.
hold his hands in place. We're going to have Ed Lavandera on the way back. He's in Lake Okeechobee. We'll be right back. We are just hearing from the American Red Cross. As many as 200,000 people, they believe now, are in some 407 shelters. That's an incredible number of people who have sought shelter in shelters. Usually people go to other people's homes or maybe hotels, but it just tells you how big the evacuation was.
And just last night there were some 63,000, so we can see how many people have decided that they needed to take shelter. Well, when we last saw Anderson Cooper and Chad Myers, they were in the middle of Weather Class 101. And
Here they are.
That's exactly where you finished.
very good. You stayed all the way through the break like that, Chad? Despite
Exactly.
the wind?
The wind was blowing him, but he stayed like that.
First,
The wind was blowing me around a little bit, but it was okay.
we have been asking you a lot of weather questions, but tell us, for those people who are just tuning in, what is the situation there where you are? Have you seen the winds kick up?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually, right as we were going to the break, I said, it seems to be dying down a little bit. Then during the break, it looks like we're getting just another gust here. So the winds here are really just maintaining very strong, and it's going to really be that way for several hours now.
The wind went down a little bit because the rain stopped. When the rain's going to kick back up again, we're going to get one of those what we call cells, one of those little convective little bursts, and as that burst comes through, the winds will pick back up again as well. I mean, we're still at 65, 70 miles per hour, but when it's raining and when the convective burst comes through, we're 100 solid gusts, 100 miles an hour easy.
And it's fascinating. We're still seeing a few transformers explode every now and then, the sky lighting up, and that sort of unearthly bluish green light. But it amazes me still that anyone has electricity left given this storm.
Well, now we know there are a lot of power lines down, because typically that'll happen when power lines short out or get off the transformers somehow, and there's going to be a lot of power lines down in the morning. And if there is still some power in the system, people need to be very, very careful. That means some of those down lines may still be hot.
Chad, we are now looking at the Doppler radar of Francis, and I have to say the back wall of the eye of this hurricane looks terrifying. I know the eye has now hit land, but this back wall is going to bring some serious damage to that state.
Yeah, the good news is, at least right now, it's still out to sea. But as it rotates through, it's going to be about 20 miles south of us or so. When that, I'm sure what you're looking at would be the oranges and the reds, if there are there, and they're going to actually rotate around right into this area, in the same area, about 20 miles south of where we are. And absolutely, that will be the most dangerous part of the storm as it rotates onshore.
And there has to be some fear that some people, should they be in the center of this, where the winds, as we saw in the Bahamas, drop down to some 10 miles per hour, people may come out thinking that the storm has passed.
Well, we hope not. I mean, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. We hope that lull will at least get some sleep. Because I know a lot of folks here, with this wind banging on the roof and all of this stuff flying in the air, nobody's sleeping in Melbourne right now.
Also, the residents here have been really well prepared for this. They've been warned in advance, and most people here know about the eye, know that it's going to get calmer for a little while. Of course, in this area in Melbourne, it's not going to get calmer. We're not going to get the eye at all. These winds are just going to keep on going, really throughout. I mean, how late tomorrow do you think?
I hope the whole thing starts to slow down by about 7 in the morning. And I mean slow down to 65 miles an hour, maybe a gust to 70, because this long-term 80 mile an hour, 90 mile an hour wind really takes its toll on everything. Shingles, cars, trees. If the tree cracked and then the wind stopped, okay, you come by tomorrow and cut the limb off. But then if the wind keeps blowing, but that tree keeps cracking, and then all of a sudden you've got debris flying around.
It's also amazing. I mean, where we are right now, it seems very peaceful because we're in a very protected area. You step out 10 feet, and the wind it'll just knock you down, especially with this roofing material just flying through the air.
Right, and we were out there earlier. If you're just joining us, we were out there in that stuff, and it was fun for a while. Then it got serious, then it got dangerous, and we said, we're done. And we tried to move a couple different places, but this overhang, it's like an aluminum siding looking overhang stuff, that keeps peeling off of the soffit here, and it just... they become missiles as they get in the air.
Yeah, it's very sharp on the side.
Yeah. And Gary Tuckman to join our conversation. He's in Fort Pierce. Is that right, Gary? And bring us up to date on the conditions there. We'll all listen in.
Well, right, Drew and Chad and Anderson. We're driving through Fort Pierce right now. We were just forced to leave the location where we've been since this morning at the Fort Pierce City Marina because about 20 of the 90 yachts have started crashing into the dock. There is a huge sail on one of the yachts that is now intertwined with the bar and restaurant that we've been standing next to for most of the morning. And for hours and hours, the boats just bobbed up and down. But in the last 2 hours, they started crashing into the wall, and we're afraid that the dock might collapse into the intracoastal waterway. So we took that as a cue that it was time to get out of there. I will tell you that here in Fort Pierce, in the northern part of St. Lucie County, we still have the eye wall here. There's no eye. The winds are still about 90 miles per hour sustained. There is extensive damage. I can't tell you that the damage is catastrophic yet because it's too dark. But I've never seen more extensive damage. We're driving every single business on US 1 has damage, has a sign down, has a roof that's partially gone. A Kmart has flooded. We just passed on, I've never seen this before, a railroad crossing. The gates have actually collapsed and are lying in the middle of US 1. These are the kinds of things we're seeing. And this is at night that we're able to spot so much. I can't even imagine what it will look like after the sun goes up. But there is very extensive damage, which, of course, leads us to the single most important concern we have. How are the people? We don't know, because people who are in their homes are stuck in their homes. There's nothing they can do. There are no police on the street, no fire. No one is going out. It's considered too dangerous. People have plenty of time to get into shelters. The shelters are relatively full, but not completely full. They've gotten calls, the emergency officials, for people who want to get out of their homes now, but it's too late. There's still hours left of this, we believe, and it's really quite scary for a lot of people because there is not one shred of light. All the electricity for all the miles we've driven is off. The only lights we see are the headlights. on our car.
And Gary, we are watching the Doppler radar. You are just as you described on the edge of the eye wall, and I am not sure if you are going to get a break or not. This eye seems to be collapsing just a wee bit where you are. You may just stay with the brunt of this storm.
The only change I've noticed, Drew, in the past hour is it's not raining quite as hard. But the winds, this reminds me, at Universal Studios in Florida, not far from where we are, they have the Twister ride. You go in and cows blow around and things, it's after the movie Twister. And it's like a 3-minute ride, show at Universal Studios. But you leave and you know it wasn't real. This is what it's like. It's like the Twister ride that never ends.
Where are you now, Gary? You said that you had to leave the area where the boats were.
We're taking a drive to the motel that we're staying at on the other side of Fort Pierce. We're on US 1, which is the major thoroughfare that runs about 1.5 miles to 2 miles away from the beach here in Fort Pierce. I don't know if you can hear in the background, but there are just signs rolling around on the streets right now.
Wow.
The signs rolling around like tumbleweeds roll around in the desert.
What you saw before you left, did it look like any of the yachts there would survive the storm?
Captain, can you ask me that question again? It was hard to hear what you just said.
Did it look like any of the yachts that you saw there, the boats that you saw there as well, did it appear that any of them would be able to survive this relentless storm?
Well, I'll tell you, a bunch. Some of them are protected a little more to the west side, where the waters were a little more calm in the intracoastal. But the yachts that we saw on the more eastern side of the intracoastal, probably 10 to 15 of them were bouncing up and down and then rubbing up against the dock. Their sails intertwined with this restaurant that I told you about. I think they'll survive. I think they're going to be heavily damaged, but I think the bigger concern right now for society as a whole is that this dock could collapse because these yachts are so heavy. The more they are really blowing as we're driving here, that's how we're stopping the car for a little while we continue talking to you. We're afraid that it could degrade the dock so much that the dock could possibly collapse. And this is not just a wooden dock. This is a place where thousands of tourists go, and certainly on this Labor Day weekend, it would have been jam-packed with tourists walking up and down and stopping at the restaurants and going to the stores and going on their yachts. So we don't know what the integrity of that dock is right now. That's the bigger concern, I think, overall.
Yeah, and Gary, this damage and this danger of the dock came just at high tide. Came in your area, so you had the high tide, you had possibly the storm surge from that eye wall, and that sounds like it's all adding up to a very terrible situation there in Fort Pierce. Again, that's Gary Tuchman describing some widespread damage that he is seeing, and Gary, of course, a veteran of many hurricanes, he knows what he's talking about.
He does, and we know Gary will stay safe, but we still worry about him. Ed Lavandera joining us now, where flooding is a big concern at one of the most popular areas, tourist areas there, Lake Okeechobee in Florida. What's the situation where you are, Ed?
Well, we have definitely seen here over the course of the last hour the strongest winds and the heaviest rainfall that we've seen. And, of course, the concern, we're about 30 to 40 miles inland away from where Gary Tuchman is, a little bit southwest of where he is. And we're on the northern edge of Lake Okeechobee. And, of course, officials around here very concerned about what will likely be heavily flooded areas along the banks of Lake Okeechobee, not just here on the north edge, but on the southern edge as well, where there are many people who have set up home as well. The county we're in is a county of about 40,000 people. We understand that most of these people, emergency officials believe most of the people around here evacuated, but there are still a good number of people that decided to kind of bunker down in several small hotels that are around the area, which is where we're at right now. Just over my shoulder, the darkness is one of the levees that takes you, if you go over the levee there, right into Lake Okeechobee, and it's surrounded by little canalways throughout the area, and that's what they're concerned about. There are a lot of trailer home parks that are set up along these different waterways, and they're concerned that will be the flooded situations. They're expecting about a 6-foot surge off of this lake, which will cause several problems. And right before it became dark this evening, we had been driving around, and we'd already started seeing heavy debris along the roadways. We hadn't seen many down power lines. They had power up until about 3.5 hours ago. when you started seeing the explosions of the blue and green light from the transformers in the darkness here. And it's kind of it's a very eerie night. Everything is completely dark. The hotels here are dark. Everyone's just kind of bunkered down, waiting for sunlight to appear. And it's going to be a long night. At one point here, the winds were getting so strong that inside the building we're in, you could actually feel the walls vibrating just a little while ago.
Yeah, it looks absolutely like there is no power at all in that area. No generators working at this point. What are people telling you? Are you able to speak with anyone?
I'm sorry, it's kind of cutting in and out on me.
Let's, Ed, stay with us. Let's bring in Jackie Jarris. Jackie, what can you tell us about the situation there at Lake Okeechobee?
Well, on the North Shore, you can see where some of these stronger rain bands are, and those are starting to push in. And with those heavier rain showers, you're going to start to get bigger bursts of those wind gusts moving on in. The other thing to think about with Lake Okeechobee is once this eye starts moving over it, we're going to start to see that storm surge, or we'll start to watch that wall of water begin to push on up over the shoreline, and that could be as high as maybe 6 feet as that moves on in. So that's going to be just maybe an hour or two away once that starts happening. But this is looking pretty persistent with this first band that's pushing on through over the North Shore. Things look just fine across southern Lake Okeechobee. So this is where Ed is in this area. We've got Gary up here. This is where the center has been as of the 1 o'clock advisory. And down here is where we've had our John Zarrella. So we've got everybody kind of keyed across all parts of the storm. Other thing I want to mention here is take a look at this right here on the east side of the storm, and that is going to be the northeast side of the storm, really. That's where some of those stronger winds are. That's that second part of the strong storm moving on through the back half, the back eye wall, and that's going to be moving on shore, I think, probably within the next hour or two as well. So those people who are getting that calm, look out, because the next round is going to be moving in here pretty shortly.
Jackie, we did get an email from Melanie from Houston. I wanted to acknowledge her. She was asking if we had anybody in the eye of the storm, and you kind of mentioned we've got everybody around that eye. But we don't have anybody in the eye,
That's
Melanie,
right.
so we can't tell you what it's like.
But the eye is calm,
right
so it's all good there right now.
But Jackie, does it look like the most of the eye now is on shore? I'm trying to get a sense of it from your
more than half, yeah. Let me get my telestrator as well. But here's the back half of the eye is right here. So it's still, I would say, offshore. This whole thing is certainly not on land just yet, but it's getting close. And once that moves on, the second eye wall is going to be pushing on shore, and that's when we're going to run into really the worst part of the storm.
Well, we haven't heard from John Zarrella for a while. He is in West Palm Beach, Florida. John, are you there?
I'm here. No change. Things are still